Okay, we are live. So let's get this live going. Okay, we are on the socials live. So let's get this live going. Okay, we are on the socials live. So let's get this live going. Okay, we are on the socials live. So let's get this live going. Okay, we are on the socials live. So let's get this. Okay, and we look over here. Perfect. So we should be all set up. Okay, so today's live stream is going to talk about how we should be thinking about AI in our new agentic first world. So let's start out with the main problem. And the main problem is that people often say, AI is taking my job, AI is taking my job. But in reality, it's not AI taking your job, it's the people who are using AI are taking your job. So a lot of people like to talk about whether or not they have the decision to use AI. I saw a post the other day where somebody said, it was a response, and they said, "Hey, look, really appreciate your AI company." It wasn't for my company, but it was another company. And they said, "I really appreciate your AI company, but I'm just not an AI person. I don't do that AI thing." And I mean, the second you start to talk about entering into the marketplace, you really need to be using the best tools, because the marketplace is a competition. It's not a it's not a kind of everyone wins type of scenario. So if you're not competing, you're losing, and you're kind of in this world of hurt. And so AI happens to be the greatest tool of all time that we've ever seen to become more productive and get more output for fewer and fewer resources. And so this talk today is going to talk about how you can set up to use AI in your everyday life to already position yourself in a way that you're better for your job, you're better for your companies, you're better for customer support, and you're better for being a builder or developer across the board. This talk really explains how you can kind of think of AI. So let's just jump right in. So most people, when they think about AI, they kind of go, I use ChatGPT, right? But what does that mean? When you use ChatGPT, you say you can use it as a kind of a search engine. You can use it as a dictionary. You can use it as a encyclopedia, right? You can use it as a reference. But all of these things, these are personal to you, right? All of these are things that are personal to you. And this is a great start. I mean, if you're using ChatGPT, you're at least familiar with the conversational flow of what AI can do, where you make a request to AI, and then you get a response back from the AI. Those responses coming back, if you're not familiar, is something called inference. Inference, right? So an inference in this world basically means that AI is taking your data, taking your question, plus the model, and it's going to predict what the response should be, right? So that's really kind of the level one of what people do. But you're kind of limited. And so let's talk about why you're limited for this type of thing. Why is ChatGPT only limiting? Right? So the first reason that ChatGPT is limiting is that it doesn't always have have a full context about you, right? So you start saying, hey, I'm looking for a job, or I'm looking to look up something related to my company. And then it does a light web search, right? But really it's just going to be looking at its current model and then going to be inferring information about you, right? And so what you really want to do is get to the level 2, which is where we want to talk about today. The level 2 version is you start like this. This is you, right? This is you with ChatGPT, and you're the kind of this little box. This is you, right? But you're more than this when you go to ChatGPT, right? When you go to ChatGPT, you're actually going to take yourself and you're going to imagine yourself having this huge background and all your skills and all your knowledge of all the things that really kind of build out who you are and what you have access to. So you have all of this information here, right? So here's all the information that you have. So this is you. This is the new you. And we're going to imagine this kind of being blue. Oops. Blue. And so this is you plus all of that context about yourself. You plus all your context, right? But in reality, when you talk to ChatGPT, you don't really want to share all of that. So what you want to do so this is all your context. But what you really want to do is you want to say, okay, I have this, and this piece here is what I really want to share with ChatGPT, right? So it's here's you, here's all of you, and then here's the piece of ChatGPT that you, or piece of context that you share with ChatGPT. So it's really similar when you go to kind of ChatGPT and you say, hey, look, help me with my resume. And it goes, okay, great. What's your resume? You go, well, here's my current resume. And I'm actually looking for a senior position in my role. Right now, I'm a junior position. I'm looking for a senior position. I've been here for a few years. I have great reviews. My manager loves me. And I think it's time for me to make a jump to another company or upgrade myself. So it doesn't care about kind of all the other random things in your life, in the sense that maybe you have a trip coming up, or maybe there's a show on TV that you're looking forward to, or maybe you're trying to work out more. All of that stuff kind of flows into this light blue line section, but this stuff here in the green is what you really care about. So you say what the model knows, what the model gets, right? And that's going to be that kind of green box. So the important piece here is that when you go to ChatGPT, either you can kind of talk to the ChatGPT and slowly string along this information, or you can go to ChatGPT and say, okay, ChatGPT, I have some data that I want to share with you. I have some data that I want to share with you. And then you want to point it to that data, right? And so this is really kind of the simple way of what the modern AI agent flow looks like. So you take an LLM, like, and this is all of them, right? You have ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Cursor, Codex, any of these models. It really doesn't matter which one you use for this type of stuff, right? This is, I mean, it certainly matters, but for this type of stuff, what really matters is that you're going to have some sort of compute engine, right? And then the second piece plus your context, right? And this is the real shining star of the modern meta on AI agents. The compute keeps getting better and better and better, and the context windows are so large that they can kind of reason about any of the context that you have. What doesn't exist is your context. So traditionally, what people do is they come in, they say, let me paste my resume, or here's a website link. But most people are really, really bad. So they're really good at opening ChatGPT, but most people are terrible at managing context, right? They're really bad at it. And so the problem with that is that the AI can only respond with context that it knows about. Right? So let's talk about what ICM is. So ICM is basically this little system in a platform that you can use. So ICM is identifier plus context plus mail. Right? We'll get into the mail portion later, but let's just start out with how you can build up a context window in the Use ICM platform. Right? So the website is useicm.com, and we'll start with this here. So Use ICM, we were talking about on the live stream the other day, but it's now really rounded out for you to really optimize yourself and get yourself an AI agent that you can then use in all sorts of places. So this is all about step one in getting you in the game of AI agents, because you need to be in the AI agent game. Because why? If you're not using AI agents, the people who are using AI are going to be taking your job. Right? The people who use AI are going to take your job. So the reason we're going through this is that we're going to help you get set up in the AI game in a way that's not just you going to ChatGPT, but in a way that turbocharges yourself in the AI game. So we'll start by kind of looking into what these little kind of context boxes are, and then we'll explore the market a little bit more. So first thing we care about for all of this is step one, get a context box and put an ICM on it, right? That's the first thing that we care about. And we go to useicm.com right here. And you can see the purpose of this platform is to give you context boxes that you can share with ChatGPT or Claude. So every time you go to Claude or every time you go to ChatGPT, you're not repeating yourself back to those models. You're going to have control over your context is number one, right? We're going to make sure that you have control over your context, right? So the flow here is that you get a named ID, you get this box, and then you're going to dump in your data, just like in a Google Drive or a folder on your computer. So you're going to pour all your notes inside, and you're going to turn on messaging when you care. So we're going to come here, and we're going to click this box. And we have this very nice new system of how you can manage your context. So all you do is you come here and you say, add context. And so you start to think about like, well, what is context? Where does this all come from? So the first can be just guidance. Guidance is saying, I really care about getting a job right now, right? You can set your tone, you can set a name for it, and then you're going to pick one of your ICMs that you have access to, right? So you go save dump. And what that's going to do is that it's going to show up right here in line. You can also use other ones, right? You can paste in a file. So you'll see here that I have one that's, a lot of these are text. That's kind of the easiest way to do it right now. But right now you can select Here's one from Bivy, which is a publication. And I went to their website and I just copied the page and I just dumped it in here, right? Or I have X profile data. This is all the data from my X profile. Or I have another article written about me on, it was a podcast and talked about an interview, right? So you have all this data, right? So text is another one. What you can do also is that you can click here and you can go to Grok and you click that button and it says, okay, read this skill, give me markdown about myself. And so this is really the easiest way for you to do it. You kind of go in, you click this button, and it's going to go to ChatGPT or Grok or Claude, depending on which one ever you use the most and you click, and it's going to get all of this context about yourself. Right? So that's important because these systems already have a bit of memory stored up about you, but what you want to do here is that you want to take that memory and now you're going to have more control over it in terms of where it gets used. And we get to this point that once you have these context boxes, you can share them with other people. Right? So as Grok runs here, it usually takes about a minute. It's going to come up with all this information. And you can actually see down here, this is a similar example where there's an article that Grok pulled on me with all of this data and all of my background. Right? So you start to think like, okay, well, now I have all this data about myself, right? How can I use all that, right? And so first pass is that you can actually go to this. You can go to your ICM and you go to my one Dolinsky ICM. You can see that it has 6 contexts set up. So I have all these different contexts. And you can actually then message this ICM directly, right? You can say, hey, I want to message it, or maybe you go to an event and you have a QR code for your ICM and you can have this share page, right? So we now have this kind of context block that not only is used for you, but it's now shareable for someone else to use in their LLM. And if you can remember, the big thing here is that it's all about having an LLM, a compute engine, plus your context, right? This is the holy grail right here. Right? Everything about AI agents is all about your compute engine plus your context. AI agent, right? This is what an AI agent is. It's any LLM plus your context. And so if you can't send around your context, it's really hard for anyone to access you or use your agent. Right? So here you can see Grok just came up with all this. We can say, hey, I'm one Dolinsky, fill it in. Right? So Grok used a template. And so this is, you can even imagine here. So it's like, okay, the ICM told it, it's like, okay, focus on your strengths, focus on your proof and evidence that it has about you, focus on your accolades, focus on your current focus. And then down here, you can see Grok is going to be looking at my LinkedIn, my GitHub, my articles, what's on X about me, and it's going to build out this baseline of who I am as a person. What that means is that now I know what I'm giving to the AI, and I can tweak it. I can change that information, right? And so it goes back to this idea here, where you have yourself, that you can just imagine yourself as a person. Then you have everything about you. And what we're doing is that we are building out this green box, this labeled data set that we can then pass around to different people. And it's also composable, right? So we can kind of mix and match them together. Right? So let's go back to here actually. So this is you. Right? Let's talk about these other scenarios. So you have you. All right, we'll zoom out just a little bit here. And we're going to do another one where this is them, right? Who else is there in the world? So you might have them could be a job interviewer, a company, could be a user of your app, or person at event, someone you meet at an event, right? So who is them? It's all of these different things, right? And so let's look at them, and we're going to say, okay, these people, exact same thing, right? Right? They have these people here have their, what you kind of see that person, and then that person has this ocean of context around them in their background. And then again, they really only care about a bit of things to kind of share with you, right? They only care about this purple box, and you only care about this green box. And so you can imagine this with jobs, with relationships, with everything that we do in terms of kind of talking with each other. It's always a context sharing scenario, right? So this is where the real magic comes, right? Traditionally, when if you have you and them, traditionally you have to share message, you have to share information with each other. So it's like, how do you share information, right? Conversation and messaging, right? The typical flow, and this is kind of why AI is going to eat people's lunch, because traditionally you use this kind of conversation and messaging, right? So you say a message, right? You say something, and then they say something. And then you say something else, and then they just respond with like a one-word answer because they're like, oh, you know what? I didn't like what you said there. And he said, you know what? Okay, let me try it a different angle. This time I said this long thing, and they're like, oh, damn, that's actually right up my alley. I had no idea that you thought of that. And you get this much longer message. And so here we have a hit, right? It's like Battleship, right? You say a square and they say, okay, I hit you. If you didn't say a square, you hit you. And when you hit on a battleship, remember, on a battleship, you have the ship that looks like this, and then you have the squares, right? So 1 square, 2 squares, 3 squares, 4 squares, right? So here's our battleship, right? And when you hit one, so we got a hit here. Actually, let's make it. Okay, we hit this one, and they say hit, hit, hit. You don't then go talk about something totally different. What you do is that you say, okay, I got a hit. Let's go one above. It's like, okay, no hit there. Let's go one this way. Hit, okay. Let's try again. No hit, okay. Now we know, okay, we're going to go here, here. You sunk my battleship, right? And so through conversation, this is how we traditionally do things, right? It's kind of this battleship game. And it's okay, but it's pretty inefficient. It's pretty inefficient because this process could take 15 minutes, right? Could take 15 minutes. And for like a job interview, you're like, hey, it's okay. But if you're applying for jobs, what's the first thing that you need to know? Is that you need to apply for a lot of jobs, right? If you don't apply for a lot of jobs, you're in a position where you don't have a good market. You actually don't know what's going on, right? Or say, for instance, you're at a conference, right? At a conference, you talk to many people. You don't just talk to one person. You go booth to booth to booth. You go to dinners, you go to drinks, all these things. You talk to all these people, right? And so imagine playing Battleship 15 minutes, like 50 times, right? All these times, 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes, right? And it's not just 15 minutes because now you got to follow up with that person. You have to explore them. Like there's a ton of work. And so it's totally fine if you want to do that. but it can be a ton of work to constantly repeat yourself all the time. So in many ways, the goal, if you had a little magic wand, the goal is to remove the redundancy of conversations. So you don't want to do it too often. And the other thing is that you want hits, constant hits, right? Imagine going to the thing and like you see the other battleship, right? You're like, sunk your battleship, sunk your battleship, sunk your battleship, right? The reason you can keep sinking people's battleships is because you know where they are and you know how to kind of get to them at the right target, right? And so all we're doing here, the modern AI agent is twofold, right? One is build out your context, right? And we talked about this. We know exactly how to build out your context, right? You come over to the ICM, you go home, say, okay, open my context. You either individually add context or you click here, you say, okay, Grok, fill in information, and you can see here, Chris Linsky, here's a good start of context about myself. So I could just come in here, I could say copy, go here, you go, okay, add context. We're gonna add this context and you can say corrupt update, right? And we go save dump. Oh, we need to associate it to our ICM, right? We're gonna associate it with Wendolinsky, save dump. And now we have the Grok update, right? And maybe at some point in time, we're like, okay, did this update on May 5th, right? We're gonna save it. And now when you come here, you're gonna see that we have one diff on this update right here. And we can actually see these diffs at some point in time, right? So the first step is to kind of build out your own context. And then the modern AI agent isn't just about having context, because you can go to Google Drive and you can get that, right? You can just have, here's my drive, right? What you can't do are a few other things. The second one that you can't do, and that the ICM system actually helps you with, is you label it and get a URL for it, right? So now you got this box of content. You're like, okay, I know about Chris. He's the AI agent guy. And if I want to share Chris and I want to say, it's almost like going to a website. You share it to your friend. You're like, hey, go to this website, or here's his ICM code. And then you can plug that into ChatGPT or Claude or Cursor, and they can then read all of my data. And now that they have this context window, and kind of start to work with each other, right? But the last piece is that you can combine contexts. So you can do this for yourself, where you have multiple ICMs for yourself, and you say, okay, Chris, he created Use ICM, he created APINow, he created Clutch, he created First Responder, he created Vipod, all of these startups and technology platforms that I built. But then not only can I combine my context to round out about myself, but you can also then combine other people's contexts. So let's go back to one of these beautiful examples. So historically, when we message each other, right, you can think about these boxes, but it's not only this box, but this person, when they said this, they actually meant this, right? And how typical is that when you say, hey, look, I'm looking to do this, but in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, I'm actually trying to say this, right? All this person. And then this person's also like, okay, well, I said this, I was too lazy to type it out, but I actually meant all of these things too, right? So this is the real conversation that's happening, but we're only messaging these little pieces here, right? So what's the alternative, right? So let's go back to here, because this is a really nice, we're gonna grab this, let's scroll down here. So what's the ideal? The ideal is that, okay, you take out that, and we say, okay, this person here and this person here, they're in a conversation. What we want to do is, as fast as possible, share what I want to share and share what they want to share, right? and share this, and share this. And as fast as possible, we want to overlap these, right? As fast as possible. This is the goal. The goal here is to take this and this. Actually, I'm going to make this full. So the goal here is go like this, go like this. And we're going to take this one and this one. We're going to bring these right to the front. And this is the magic moment of all of this, right? This is where this gets really good. We want to combine these two people right? Right. The goal here is to basically take these two people and we get perfect context overlap, right? And then where we overlap is this circle here. And so you get this diamond of overlapping content. And this is the real gem, right? This is the real gem of content. So imagine you could just say, I know exactly where we overlap with each other, right? And we don't have to talk to each other. We're not saying this but mean this, and they're saying this and they mean this, and then somebody says a short message because they're like, oh, I didn't mean that. We can actually say exactly what we want. And what we're doing is we're sharing our desired context with each other. And AI is going to do the matchmaking, right? It's going to know exactly where we want to talk with each other. Right? This is the very best thing. Right? And so with ICM, basically you get LLM, right, which is compute your context. And then somebody else has an ICM too, and we get their context, right? And what we do is that LLMs are the glue that bring context together, right? So just think of it like that, right? You're out there and you go talk to a business. The business has their data and you have your data, right? The goal here is to bring each other together, right? And we want to do this for machines, optimized for machines over humans, right? Because again, the people that are using AI are the ones that are taking your job. It's not AI taking your job. It's the people using AI and setting it up for success that are going to be taking everyone's job, right? So down here, we get this piece where it's LLMs are the glue that bring these contexts together. And then you can say, how can we work together? What's something I should ask them? Right? And so you can imagine yourself, it's like, okay, right now, everyone's in the world is like, you have, let's talk about it, okay? So the world right now is structured with a bunch of little u's, right? Here you are. this is you, right? And then plus your LLM, right? You're using an AI and you're like, okay, I'm a super AI, right? But we have this kind of piece. It's like a wall, the wall, right? The wall blocks most people from using AI as effectively as possible. So what does AI used effectively as possible actually look like? Right? So the next up is this. This is your tribe. Right? So let's imagine that not only do you have you plus your LLM, and this, what I mean by is your context, but imagine you had everyone's context in this kind of local world. So it could be a company context, or your family context, or your relationship context, right? Or your job context, or event context, right? Or your app context, right? These are small, let's say kind of like sub 1,000, or yeah, sub 1,000 ICMs, right? But there's many ICMs, right? So this is the next level. So this is where most people stop or they really slow down, right? A lot of us are kind of individually using Claude Code, individually using ChatGPT, but we're not mixing and matching our context with other people's context. We're doing it kind of on our own accord, and we're not kind of helping each other out, right? So you can imagine at the company context, you have ICMs for each product. And again, what is an ICM? An ICM is just the data, right? It's the data that you can send to an AI and say, hey, what is the LLM.txt for this product? And it's like, boom, here's the history of the product. Here's all the dimensions of the product. Here are the use cases of it. Here are sales for the product. So it's this all-encompassing kind of idea related to that one product. But not only the product, maybe you have it for a department. What's the ICM for a department? What's the ICM for the CEO? You have all of these kind of like contexts that are kind of making up a company. Same thing goes with the family. It's like, okay, well, what's my dad's ICM? What's my mom's ICM? What are the events that are coming up in our family ICM? Like, what's our calendar? What is the context? What is the data for that? And the goal again for all of this is AI agents are context plus LMs, right? Plus compute, right? So our goal here is to kind of get the context out of these things so that we can then use them in a compositional way. So we can kind of say, take some data from here and move it over here. And that way we have a better way to work with this data and send it to AI in a way that is repeatable, in a way that we don't have to kind of copy and paste, that we don't lose the context, but we get the most out of AI, right? So let's go through a couple other examples, right? So your job context, right? Job context is a really exciting one, right? Where you have job application, right? Then you have the company. So you have these different ICMs, right? Or context windows, like ICM context window, right? That's really ICM is context window. Just think about it like that. So you have the company ICM, you have the market ICM, right? These are the things that you care about, saying, okay, I'm applying for this job. When I apply for these jobs, these are the things I really think about. And then you have your resume ICM, you have your work history, your cover letter, right? You have all that context. And again, you get to this where you're not having a conversation in the job interview being like, hey, tell me about your background. Oh, what did you do there? That's great. Oh, what'd you do here? And it's like a 3-hour interview. How about instead, you just send over your context. The company says, hey, here are our requirements. And boom, you get this. You get a match, right? This whole thing on the orange side right? Orange is a context match, right? That's the best. This is the goal, right? This is really what we want here. We want a context match. And so here you have these not individual. So we go individual, then we go local, right? These are the contexts for your company. Event is a really good example. We were talking about this kind of battleship example where you have you go to an event and you have these conversations, and then based on the conversations you're like, oh, okay, like we found a match on this piece of our kind of our background or our business. Then we like land and expand, and we explore certain aspects of each other to say, okay, well maybe we can work there, like let's have a dinner, let's bring in these other people to expand the context window. Everything is about context, right? App context, really good example too, where you're building out an app and you're like, you know what, I wish everyone knew about that. What do people do when they build apps, right? When people build apps, they have landing pages, FAQ pages, right? They have change logs, right? All of these things. It's all of this effort and all these beautiful websites. But why are we making the beautiful website? The reason we're doing is that we want to keep people's attention. Why make the website, right? We want to keep their attention, right? Give them the most important information up front, right? But that's a total disaster every time, because everyone's information that is useful and relevant to them is different, right? So we kind of guide them through this, be like, hey, you care about this, you care about this. But what if, especially when you're a bigger company, you might have a product suite of 10, like dozens of items, right? So then you get into this like filtration system, right? But what if when somebody who's using your app or coming to your business, they brought their ICM and you have your ICM, and the AI does all the matchmaking. So for instance, you have a travel application to say, hey, where do you want to travel? You go, you know what, I'm really a beach person. I don't care about hikes. I don't care about the ruins. I need white sand and crystal clear waters. And so instead of talking to this travel agent for an hour researching all this stuff, the AI goes, you know what, I know you. I know that you like white sand, crystal clear water. How about Aruba? How about Sardinia? How about Ischia, right? All of these places around the world. This is the superior model because AI can do things that we can never do before, right? So we're getting context matches overlapping immediately. So you can imagine yourself here being this green box, being like, okay, I only want white sand. These guys have white sand. They got hikes. They have forest trips. They have Arctic trips. They have cruises. They got all this stuff. This is the travel agency. And you're like, okay, well, I only want this. And like, boom, gotcha. Here's a list of 10. And now we're already narrowed down because we had the right context to bring it all together. The last piece is that, so we go from individual use of AI to local use of AI. This is already a huge opportunity for the ICM model, where people are just setting up their contexts and they say, okay, here are all the contexts for our business. Now, when somebody new comes in, they can quickly identify all the data that they need. And then the last piece is the network, right? The internet. The internet is massive, right? Is massive. Right? And so you have yourself, remember how this is you? This is you. And there are trillions of API calls on the internet. There's so much data flowing around the internet. You could never, ever have conversations with the internet. You have to present. And it's why I'm creating this video, right? You have to present. You have to get out there. You have to create things that are repeatable. And what you need to do with the internet is make sure that you have an ICM, and you need to promote the hell out of your ICM so that your ICM gets sent to Facebook pages, right? Your ICM basically can connect to a lot of these kind of local things, but in a super distributed thing. So you can think about Facebook pages or companies, or maybe you have some influencers, right? So you got influencers here. You have companies, you have Facebook, right? And so what you want is that you want your ICMs to go directly and be catered to these things, right? You have your ICM, and so you're going to say, okay, I have an ICM for when I apply to jobs, or when I join a Facebook group about biking. I don't need to tell them about my entire background. I just want to let them know that I'm a beginner biker. I did my first 80-kilometer bike. It took me 2 hours, and I'm really excited about it. Who else in here has kind of been biking for a while? And then you can land and expand with your ICM, right? But the beauty of this is that instead of you having individual conversations, but more often than not, people without AI agents are invisible, right? Nobody knows about who you are, what you're good at, and you could have the 5 conversations in a year to talk to people, and you're going to have a really slow life. Nobody's going to learn about you, right? So again, what you need to do is you need to set up your context. Set up your context. Use ICM.com, right? You go to useICM.com, hit the home page. You go, okay, open the context window, start adding in your context, and then you're going to get your ICMs. You'll see that I have a 1 Dolinsky ICM here. I've claimed it on my X account, right? But you're going to have a couple ICMs. I have 2 of them here. And you can fill in your ICMs, right? There's a whole management system here, right? But after you have your ICMs, then you can share that unique ID to share anywhere, right? So it's almost like it's the modern resume, it's the modern cover letter, it's the modern feed where you say, hey, I have a data block. If you want to learn about me, go send it to, go paste it in your LLM, let them use the compute, and your data block will then be used by anyone on the internet, and they won't need to ask you 50,000 questions. They will instantly have matches, and they'll come to you with higher signal to say, hey, look, your ICM said that we did this, we have an overlap, let's move forward. So we're saving all of this kind of niceties, but also just kind of this like lossy conversation where a lot is getting mixed here because you have all this information up here, but now you're getting super high signal information. Now we get into more benefits of the ICM, right? So not only can people share your ICM and contact your ICM, there's also messaging, right? So you can actually message it. So you'll see that in your ICM, you can go to your mailbox, you select your ICM, and your ICMs can actually have conversations with each other, right? So you can now you have a box of content, and somebody then can connect with your box of content and say, hey, look, I saw that you're working on this, blah, blah, blah. That's really great. That's cool. It's cool like a static information. But if you guys are familiar, the last piece I want to show you here is that you have listeners, right? Listeners are super important, right? Because not only do you have this kind of like beautiful context window that's shareable and you can kind of give it to ChatGPT and reason about it and say like, hey, ChatGPT, like tell me why this person is good at my company. So not the resume, not the cover letter, but actually a full data dump about everything that they've done from all their places. Okay, perfect. But we're not static individuals. We're improving over time. We get better and better and better, right? And so one thing we're able to do is that in here, you can actually go to the discovery page and you can say, okay, hey, here's the 1 Dolinsky ICM. I last sent them a message 7 days ago, but I want to subscribe to them. So I can click subscribe and I can say, okay, I'm going to subscribe to their ICM and I'm going to give it a webhook. And the beauty of this is that as they subscribe, right, this one I'm not going to do a webhook, but I'm going to say subscribe. So now I've subscribed to them. And on the subscriptions page, we're going to actually see these different feeds come in. And as they make updates to their data, so they have their context box, but say, for instance, I go to my context box and say, hey, I just reached a new milestone. I'm now kind of doing YouTube lives, or I've updated the ViniApp platform. I've updated APINow. You can now listen in and you get a direct feed saying, hey, look, these people have done something new, and you'll get a notification here. And the benefit with the webhook is that you can actually say, put an AI filter on that webhook, right? You can say, okay, this person made an update, but it's an update that I don't care about. So now you can have machines talking to machines, right? Your AI app is updating, and then it sends out a change log and it makes an update to its context window of the ICM. Perfect. So the data is updated. since the data has been updated, all of the webhooks then fire and all the listeners get notified saying, hey, Chris just updated his ICM. And so because of that, all of those AIs can then respond and be like, oh shit, he just did an update. What should we do now? Right? And so this is really the power of this kind of ICM system where it's not only is just the context, but you have the mailbox to message each other, and then you have these listeners to watch the ICMs and get an idea of kind of who's doing what then. Right? And so you can actually, because of the composability of this system, you can actually come here and you can create a cron job with code to update the context window of your data, and then you can have all these listeners listening. And so you create this machine-to-machine system where the machines are talking to the machines and they're just constantly finding this orange box of updates and data sharing with each other. And so we go from having what everyone is doing right now. This is the modern stack, right? The modern stack in general is just not that good. Right? The modern stack here right is not so good. But where things get really, really good is here. Right? This whole stack here, this is magical stuff. Right? This is ICMs for specific context. Right? And remember, ICM stands for identifier. Identifier plus context boxes plus mail. Right? So you can message it. And then you have subscriptions, or let's call it watchers, to listen for changes. Right? So you can imagine, okay, you're a travel agency. Your job is just to kind of update the data related to your business. Every time it updates, send out a notification or send an update to the ICM box, and everyone watching says, hey, look, they have a brand new deal on. Right? So it's like the X feed. So it's X post feed for machines. Right? It's not limited to 100 characters. You can have full context windows. And this is an update to your state. Update to your state, not just a post. Right? Because what happens is if you make if you don't have a proper state, so for instance, I have my X handle, my profile is super limited. You go to my profile on X, and you can see my profile here. It's super thin. How do I go there? Right? This is all you get with my profile. Well, like, who the hell is this guy, right? Who is Chris Delinsky? What has he done in the past? Has he, like, I got all these startups, I got all these technology skills, I do live streaming. Who the hell would know about any of this, right? Nobody's gonna know, right? But here, even if I listen to all these posts, it's like, okay, what is that, right? Who that tells you nothing about Chris Delinsky, right? So you really need this kind of resume in the background to be like, okay, I need to talk to Chris Delinsky, I need to know more. And so this is the live stream feed, streaming of data, streaming data feed for machines, right? That's what ICM is. ICM is the streaming data feed for machines. You're not just updating, you're not just sending a post, you're saying, hey, here's the post and here's the rounded out version of my ICM. And you can do a ton with this. And so anyone right now, if you're interested, you can join our wave of kind of getting set up with ICM so we can collaborate faster. I want to know about you. You can use my ICMs and we can find ways to collaborate instantly. You can message my ICM, I can message your ICM. And for conversation, if we want to help each other out, we actually have a new Telegram. So if you go to useicm.com/join, if you are an AI native, or if you want to be, join us, right? Join the wave of useicm.com. The website is right here, right? It's limited time offer. It's $0. We're just starting out, but we will increase the price to $20 per month because we really want to make sure that only serious people are kind of in this platform, right? So join the Telegram, it'll open up right here, right? But let's review really quickly, right? The people who are using AI are going to take your job, right? So are you using AI or not? If you don't want to use AI, I get it. You don't want to be part of the marketplace. But if you do want to be a part of the marketplace and earn and be a provider and improve your life, you're going to need to use AI, right? You started with ChatGPT, but ChatGPT needs context for you to improve your responses. It's not going to know about your background or what your interests are unless you tell it. Once you have some data, you can start to use our ICM system. So you don't have to constantly repeat yourself in ChatGPT, being like, hey, here's my resume, here's this. You're going to control the context so that you can have them in little boxes and you can say, hey, ChatGPT, remember we're talking about my job? Here's my data context for my job, right? Here's my resume. After that, because of ICM, not only do you have the data, but now you have a shareable identifier with it, and you can share it with other people. So I have my shareable identifier, they have their shareable identifier, and instead of us kind of having conversations and losing context in the conversation, people getting upset with each other because you said it in the wrong way, and then actually finding massive ground, this is not like Battleship where we're landing and expanding. We're using AI to immediately find context overlap, right? We know exactly, the AI can tell us exactly where we overlap. And so we get this context overlap that's like telepathy. It's like, oh, you know me perfectly, I know them perfectly. Boom, here's all the ways that we match. Let's move forward. Let's get some deals done, right? This isn't just for yourself, right? Most people are just using it context with LM for themselves. This is for your company. This is for your jobs, your relationships, your events, your contacts, or your apps that you're building, right? This is how you share information with each other, and then we use the power of AI to find overlap and improve way better. And this doesn't happen just locally. This can happen at the scale of internet, right? Facebook groups, companies, influencers, right? There's all of this data flowing around. We don't have time to have small micro conversations with each other. Instead, your goal is to kind of build out your context window, get your shareable ID from the ICM system, and share your context, and then we'll all use our cursor or Claude Code to interact with each other, right? And so at the end of the day, we're going to have a bunch of little boxes of data that we can pose together based on the conversation that we're having. I'm going to get your data, I'm going to get their data, I'm going to get my company data, I'm going to get my data, put it all into an AI conversation, and I'm going to say, how can we work together? Boom, 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 boom. All of these ways we can work together. And then lastly, as I make updates to my data, I don't want you to have to kind of come to my X account and be like, oh, did Chris say something today? Like, oh, just can't wait till he says something. No, no, no. We're going to set up these listeners where you can just listen into certain ICMs and be like, look, if they change their data, let me know. Because if they change their data, we want to do something. And so this is a full system that's fully operational right now. And we're going to build out a community of people that are interested in using AI to elevate their job and their productivity and the market perception of themselves so they know how to use your applications. If you want to join, use ICM.com, and our Telegram is useicm.com/join. Thanks so much, and look forward to